This is Ag Matters PM from the Iowa Agribusiness Radio Network, brought to you by the Iowa Soybean Association. Your daily recap of the information that affects Iowa's farmers, producers, and consumers, right here in the heart of the heartland. With reports from our award-winning broadcast team of Dustin Hoffman, Riley Smith, and Mark Magnuson. Now, from the IARN studios in Des Moines, here's Mark Magnuson.
Hello and welcome into Ag Matters PM on the Iowa Agribusiness Radio Network. I'm Mark Magnuson. Today is Monday, May 12th, 2025, and we're so glad you can join us for today's show. In today's episode, I will be joined by Robin Schmahl of agmarket.net for our closing markets, as we will discuss today's WASDE report. But first, it is some comments that are being brought to you from Senator Chuck Grassley's weekly conference call with ag broadcasters and reporters, as he addresses the question of whether or not there will be pieces of the Farm Bill included in the reconciliation.
Many people have asked whether pieces of the Farm Bill will be included in the reconciliation package. That includes the Supplemental Nutrition Assistance Program, SNAP as you know it, or food stamps as you might know it, and also the Title I commodity support programs. Unlike the House, the Senate has to abide by certain rules in reconciliation, specifically what we call the Byrd Rule. It's still unclear whether these Farm Bill components can pass the Byrd Rule. However, if there is a change to the Title I programs in reconciliation, specifically an increase in reference prices, then common sense payment limits ought to be included as well. You know, I've been an advocate for that over several Farm Bills. Most often, I'm doing it through advocating the closing of the quote-unquote actively engaged loophole for some time. Currently, multiple family members who don't work on the farm can each receive a full $125,000 payment. Farm payments should go to farmers with dirt under their fingernails, not somebody working on Wall Street. The free market is a good thing, and successful farms should be able to grow. I have no problem with farmers increasing the size of their farming operation, but the federal government does need to subsidize them more than the small and medium-sized farms. I'll keep pushing to close this loophole, whether it's in the next Farm Bill or, if possible, through reconciliation.
That was United States Senator, Republican from Iowa, Chuck Grassley here on Ag Matters PM. It is time now for the closing markets. I will be joined by Robin Schmahl of agmarket.net. But first, a word from our sponsors, the Iowa Soybean Association and the Soybean Checkoff.
Iowa Soybean Association is driven to deliver for Iowa's 40,000 soybean farmers. We're proud to provide objective agronomic research, a helping hand with soil and water stewardship, and timely industry news powered by the Soybean Checkoff. Learn more at iasoybeans.com.
It's time now for the closing markets here on Ag Matters PM, and I'm joined by Robin Schmahl of agmarket.net. And Robin, we have quite a bit of news to discuss here today. Of course, it was WASDE report day. We had the meetings between the United States and China over the weekend. How did the grains trade here on Monday?
Well, we had the strength really came in early, overnight, but early in the morning. Corn kind of faltered a little bit as we came toward the end of the day. We did see the May and July contract actually negative. So that kind of weakened a little bit, but soybeans remained fairly strong. And when we look at the 90-day pause on the export tariffs between the U.S. and China, obviously it would probably impact the bean market more so. So that's kind of what's been reflected today. And really the 90-day pause, what that's going to take us through the growing season pretty much. So then the other things will materialize since then. So it's not that that's all put to bed at this point in time, but there's going to be continued negotiations happening and hopefully for the best. But that's the big news driver of the market, both in the grain market and the livestock market, but we'll get to livestock later. Now we got the export inspections this morning. Corn was 1.224 million metric ton. That was down below the average a little bit for what the trade was estimating. But we've ticked up a little bit on our export or inspections relative to last year. So now we're 29% ahead of last year. Where last couple of weeks we were 27% ahead. So we're doing well in that area of shipping it out. Soybean export inspections was 426,077 metric tons, below the estimate of 470. That's 11% ahead of last year on what was inspected to be shipped out. Wheat was at 405,107 metric ton, slightly above the 400,000 metric ton they had anticipated, and those are 17% of last year. So when you look at that as a whole, we are shipping it out. It's actually doing fairly well. Now, the World Supply and Demand report that came out, we did see some, positive news in that. Also, in some aspects, not quite so much. Corn production is estimated for this upcoming year at 15.820 billion bushels. That last year it was 14.867, and that stands to reason because of the higher acreage. We're looking at 5% higher acreage being planted at 95.3 million. So that's a lot of corn that's going to go in the ground and be planted. So it'll be, stands to reason we're going to see, higher production. Soybean production at 4.340 million acres, or I'm sorry, billion bushels. And last year we were at 4.366, so slightly below that because of the reduction in acres, because we're looking at the acreage down to 83.5 million acres. Now export sales were raised by 25 million bushels in soybeans. Corn exports were raised 50 million bushels, and so that reflects in the ending stocks that we're looking at, a 1.451 billion bushel ending stocks in corn, lower than, of course, 50 million lower than the last report in April. Soybeans at 350 million and wheat at 841 million bushels for ending stocks. Now the expectations for 25-26 or the next year ending stocks are at 1.80 on corn, and soybeans at 295. So that is increasing and decreasing relative to what the production could be. Of course, weather is going to have a big say in that. So ethanol use this year is projected at 5.5 billion bushels. So we did see some positives, some negatives really in the report. Argentina corn was unchanged at 50 million metric tons. Brazil raised their corn production for this year by 4 million metric ton to 130. Soybeans, Argentina was unchanged at 49 million. Brazil at 169 million metric tons. So those were unchanged from the April estimate. The futures kind of reflected what was going on. So that was the main driver. Now we have estimates for planting. We have corn at 58% this week compared to 49% last week, the previous week. Soybeans at 46% versus 35% last week, and spring wheat at 62% versus 61% last year. Those are estimates. The report will be released in a couple of hours.
We saw this morning to start the day that the livestock side of the markets, a lot of strength on that side of the markets. Is that how that marketplace closed here today? Yeah, the livestock market was very strong into the close. We had June cattle, live cattle, and all of the feeder cattle gapped higher this morning. And basically that was more of the news of the situation, the pause of tariffs with China. The hogs did not respond quite as much on that side, but also on the side of the live cattle
or feeder cattle was the announcement by Secretary of Ag Rawlins that all Mexican imports of cattle are suspended as of yesterday. So we couple those two things together, and we really had some strength coming into that market. So the exports of cattle, horses, and bison were halted from Mexico because of the screwworm threat that's been moving a little bit further north. And that just lit the fire under the market. So we had all new contract highs again. Last week, we had Southern live cattle traded at $1 to $2 higher. We had Northern dressed $6 higher. So that just continues. Packers may not have been able to surround themselves much with extra supply for deferred delivery last week again, which could put them, in the situation where the feedlots are in control again this week. The World WASDE report did show some strong or some positive news from steer prices in the second quarter this year. They raised them $13 to $217. Third quarter was raised $10, averaging $220. So that's a positive development that came out of the World Supply and Demand report. On the hog side, they didn't respond quite as much. They were higher, but not quite as much as we would have anticipated on the export news with the export tariffs, because China generally has been a large buyer of hogs. So they didn't respond quite as well, but it did put a nice move into that market after it was in a threat of declining some more. Pork production off of the WASDE report was reduced 79 million pounds, but second quarter average price was raised $5 to $68. Third quarter was raised $6 to $71. And fourth quarter was raised $4 to $60. So that was positive on the World Agricultural Supply and Demand report. Now, at the midday report for cash, we were down 45 cents. Not a big deal there. And the cutouts were down 49 cents. So I think that'll be overridden by the other news that's in the hog market. So I think that we may see a little bit more buying interest coming into that now that that reprieve on tariffs has been done with between U.S. and China.
What's the best way for our viewers to get in touch for more marketing information, Robin?
They can call me directly if they would like at 877-256-3253, or they can go to our website, agmarket.net. There's an 844 number that they can call in, and somebody will pick up the phone and be glad to work with them.
He is Robin Schmahl of agmarket.net, my guest here today on Ag Matters PM. Robin, thanks so much for the time. Always appreciate it, and have a great rest of your week.
All right, you too, and I always appreciate you having me on the show.
Thank you to Robin Schmahl of agmarket.net for our closing markets here today. Let's take a look at the closing numbers. You can find that information anytime under the Markets tab of our website at iowaagnet.com.
July corn closes down 1 3/4 at $4.48 even. July soybeans up 19.5 at $10.71 1/4. July soybean meal up $4 at $2.9810. July soybean oil up $1.35 at $49.92. Chicago wheat down 6.5 at $5.15 1/4. Minneapolis wheat down 9.5 at $5.84 even. Kansas City hard red wheat down 9.5 at $5.08 even. July oats up 2 1/4 at $3.46 even. On the Merc, June live cattle up $2.15 at $216.83. May feeder cattle up $5.13 at $303.10. June lean hogs up 73 cents at $98.30. June pork cutout unchanged at $104.13. Class 3 milk up 2 cents at $18.44.
That does it for the closing markets here today on Ag Matters PM and brings us to the end of today's show. You can find all of our content on our website at iowaagnet.com. Don't forget to subscribe to our YouTube channel. Click on the notification icon. You can also listen to our morning, midday, and closing market podcast wherever you find your favorite podcast at Apple, Amazon, Google, Spotify, and Podbean. That's also where we have our daily episodes of our Iowa Ag Matters podcast. From the Iowa Agribusiness Radio Network studios in Des Moines, I'm Mark Magnuson. For Riley Smith, Dustin Huffman, and Andy Peterson, we thank you for watching. This has been Ag Matters PM.